Good afternoon, ladies and gents. It's the 2nd of July, 2025. And I was going to say a quick discussion. Well, I'll try and keep it as quick as I can because there's just a lot of bullshit information. I want to kind of try and condense massively to avoid any misdirection, confusion, and anything else that's likely to send people into the darkness. The US attack on Iran 10 days ago. We're all aware of it. And if you're not, you're probably on the wrong channel right now. But there are some big concerns I just want to push out to you guys and a couple of warnings. Just a quick disclaimer. I'm going to be mentioning some articles. I'll throw some up on the screen and some statements being published online at the moment. And quite frankly, news, if that's what you even want to call it, for the last week to 10 days, which shouldn't really, to a degree, shouldn't be allowed to be published because most of it is unverified. Guys, I'm going to just throw up some of these articles and news headline statements so that, just so that we know what we're referring to here. I'm not going to go into them in too much detail. I just want to sort of emphasize a couple of points, really. So the dust has settled across the Middle East for now, and many now under the illusion that it's all over. There's a ceasefire in place, no more fighting, and everything's back to normal. I'm just going to throw this up. Just bear with me as I kind of do this spontaneous madness sort of stuff. But it's necessary. Guys, we're talking about a possible world war that hasn't either already started, just starting, or being primed to start. A world war, depending on where in the world that you live, is likely to affect you and your family. And that goes without saying. And honestly, it's becoming more and more serious as the days go by. I'm talking about me here in the UK. We're seeing this information being drip fed by the government to us lot here. But nobody should be ignoring any of this. But I've spoken to a few people over the last week. They're people that I know on the phone and then others online that I don't know in person. And all of them are completely confused, confused with what's happened over the last 10 days in Iran at those 3 nuclear facilities. They're confused with what happened days running up to the event, and they're now completely confused, some days after those events. Do you know why these people, and when we're talking about these people, we're talking about millions of sort of people around the world. Do you know why they're confused right now? It's because of 2 things, or groups. We've got the politicians first and foremost, and secondly, online channels, outlets, news feeds, and those so-called analysts and experts, and a handful of people who have worked in very high places during their careers. So they're SMEs or subject matter experts within various fields, alongside government, ISR or intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, law enforcement. You've got people that have been in the military, have been in there a long time, come out, a lot of experience and knowledge. And this is why much of what is going on at the moment is completely mind-blowing. We're being told all sorts of things, theories and next moves, possibilities, and the list goes on, from people of many different backgrounds and experience and knowledge between them. Now, basically what I want to do, guys, I'm just going to go through some of these articles, okay? And I just want to emphasize a couple of the points that seem to be confusing people. And you're not alone, guys, because it's confusing me as well. Let me just change what we got on the screen quickly. This is not going to be an interactive, there's not going to be much in the way of interaction. It's just going to be content, really. Let's just see if I can get that up there. Right, okay. Right, okay, so I just want to go through these. Sorry about that. Right, I can't find the source of this information now, but I remember reading, this would have been, if those attacks were 10 days ago, we're talking 12 days ago. So I'm talking prior to the US attacks on those sites. But I remember reading or hearing online that Iran was made aware of the bunker busting attacks before they happened. We hear that Iran preempts the loss of those assets by obviously relocating those assets, such as the enriched or non-enriched uranium, other chemicals, and a raft of specialist equipment used during these nuclear programs. Relocated to anywhere between 4 to 6 other locations. We're also now hearing that Iran preempted these strikes some months ago, and they've apparently bored additional tunnels to other bunkers only a mile away from, I think it's Fordo and maybe one of the others. But that was to allow them to relocate those assets in preparation for these attacks. Guys, the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, says that Iran has 8,400 kilograms of enriched uranium in all, and 408 kilograms of that has been enriched or refined to around 60%. Now, guys, that's what we're being told. That's information coming from the IAEA, if in fact they have been told the truth with those numbers. Most of that is believed to have been stored at the is it Isfahan Nuclear Technology Research Center, hence the significance of that site. The US did not use bunker busters there, but instead I think they only used Tomahawk missiles, so they were launched from submarines, a few miles out, causing surface damage to buildings, etc. And only yesterday, I think, was it yesterday? We've heard that the IAEA announcing that Iran could be enriching uranium again within a couple of months. Okay, that's what we were hearing yesterday. Now, what else have we been hearing? We've heard people say that the US gave Iran the nod. Others say that they didn't. But the truth is someone did, because they knew they were coming. Hence the transporters moving those assets above ground prior, and other assets moved underground to storage bunkers connected to main facilities. So those are the bunkers that people are now talking about that were built, in response to such attacks. I'm just going to throw this up, but what else have we been hearing? We have heard the US states that those facilities, especially Fordo, was completely obliterated, gone, no more and finished. But then we hear Iran state that Trump is talking a load of bollocks. Guys, unless the Iranians start publishing and making public pictures of the damage in those bunkers, then we're never really going to know the true extent, of the damage caused, and should forget about some of these claims that are being made. It's all guessing. Everyone's guessing at the moment. So you kind of, you can join that party and guess with them, or you can kind of just wait until there's some facts, if in fact we ever see them. But for me, I look at logic and common sense. Those GBU-57 bunker busters, or those bombs, are huge. And when dropped from 45,000 feet onto a target, that's going to cause significant damage regardless, because that's just physics. Iran I've seen satellite pictures. Over the last couple of days, we're seeing those pictures, which are showing heavy construction equipment around these facilities now. They're reopening the entrances or clearing them, and already moving into repair and rebuild those compounds. So that is a sign that the damage caused at those sites isn't quite as bad as the US had made out. Let me just see again, because like I was saying, I wanted to kind of just emphasize some of these and just make sure that, if you haven't seen them, you are sort of seeing them. There's loads of channels out there playing the same game as these politicians at the moment, saying that the facilities are completely fractured, or the strikes have not caused much in the way of damage, or blah, 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 blah. We're also hearing that Iran has taken out a third of Israel. Whether that's their infrastructure or what, I'm not too sure. Whatever that means, but they're saying that they've severely damaged Israel's infrastructure, and then Israel is saying it's a load of rubbish. We've heard, what else have we heard? So we heard, right, okay, I'm just going to cover 3 points here. So following the attacks on Fordo, Isfahan and is it Natanz? everyone was talking about Iran's, how are they going to respond? So, they're retaliating. And there was talk about them closing the Strait of Hormuz, how the red flag of revenge was raised, activating sleeper cells around the world, how US air bases and other military compounds will be hit across the Middle East. We hear how, Iran is going to take out some of the Western naval vessels currently patrolling the Middle Eastern Gulfs and Sea. It's down to you and I, based on our assessment of of those sort of situations, to determine the likelihood of the retaliation. Again, what I'm trying to say here, guys, is there's a lot being said, but no one really knows. So it's all kind of guesswork at the moment. As we were talking about sleeper cells, presidency, yeah, okay, right, no problem. We've also heard, okay, over the last week or so, how Trump is telling Iran to surrender, and how the supreme leader is lucky to be alive. How the supreme leader and other, I think, Iranian representatives are saying that they have saved all of their enriched uranium. They're now building new facilities. They're obviously repairing the ones that have been damaged, and they will continue with their program. And announced, that's an announcement sort of being backed up by the IAEA themselves. So if anyone's out there thinking that this is all over, and it hasn't even started yet. Okay, we've just gone into a bit of a lull at the moment, whilst everyone regroups, rearms, and everything else. But on top of that, we now have the Iranian Grand, is it Ayatollah cleric? What's his name? Oh, I can't see it there. Anyway, he's been issuing and declaring a new fatwa against both Trump and Netanyahu. Um, fatwa. Oh, I don't know if that's the right way of saying it. Fatwa. The meaning of that is just any person or regime that threatens the leader or marja is considered a warlord or a moharib, and it is necessary for all Muslims around the world just to make these enemies regret their words and mistakes. Now, when they sort of state that, are they talking about all the Muslims in the world just descend on Trump and Netanyahu, or is it the US and Israel, or is it what is it? Is when you announce fatwa against those two people, is it those two people personally? Because if it is, 99% of the Muslim world are going to get nowhere near those two guys. Okay, so that, but it only takes the 1% to get through and to obviously execute whatever it is they want to do. But guys, I'm not going to talk about that now. And it is a serious subject that deserves probably more time and focus. So I'll do a separate video for that. And that is in relation to, the declaring of fatwa against Trump and Netanyahu. Right. Okay. Just moving on. What else have we've sort of heard? We've heard, well, I say I've heard, and a lot of other people have heard, how, all the shit regarding Russia and China, and how they've sort of left Iran hanging, and how they're not getting involved and not doing anything to help Iran out. Now, guys, don't be disillusioned by that just because you don't see them making announcements and all the rest of it. They are an alliance within themselves. So we're talking about Russia, Iran, China, North Korea. Okay, they're in an alliance and they will help each other out and back each other. So don't think for 1 minute that they're not involved and they've just left Iran hanging. And just to finish off, these are just a couple of, listen, there's a lot of points, but I'm not going to go through them all. Let me just do this last one though. There was a lot of talk straight after that bombing of those nuclear sites, how that mission was right up there, being one of the best, if not the best, aerial operation of all time, or it's certainly in recent times maybe. How those pilots and operators and command and control personnel were heroes. Yeah, of course, it was a good mission, a successful mission, which involved intricate precision and sort of strategic planning. But they were faced with no opposition. They were allowed to fly in, drop bombs, and fly out and go back home, which sort of evidently makes this mission even more successful, of course, because they've been able to execute, that said operation. But it, if you're not going to be opposed, then it's easy. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I see it. If we're talking about successful sort of aerial operations, if we're looking at the Midnight Hammer, it wasn't it basically wasn't an air campaign, guys. Unlike the Battle of Britain in 1940 or the Battle of Midway in 42. What else have you got? The Battle of Stalingrad, and there are others like the Battle of the Philippine Sea, the German Air War, and that lasted one day. That was an air battle. It was a one-day air battle in history, and that involved 14,000 combat aircraft. Okay, so we're not talking about a few B-2s and a few F-35s and F-22s that are not even challenged. Okay, this completely different level. You had the Operation Tidal Wave in 1943. Is it all in the 40s around about World War Two? It was a large scale bombing raid on oil refineries in Romania. The devastating aerial engagement for the Japanese during the Marianas Turkey shoot, which was in 43 as well. You had Operation Hailstone in 44, targeting the Japanese naval base that was at Krakatoa. That involved intense air and sea battles, and the list goes on. So, what I'm trying to say, guys, is that the Midnight Hammer is not even on par with these at all. Not even on par with those that happened in World War Two. So anyway, that's another bit of that'll be the Americans boosting themselves up, and quite rightly so. I mean, they achieved a goal, whether it's the right goal, who knows. But what I'm trying to say here, guys, is the US are really beefing this mission up. It was a successful mission, and apparently a mission, I think I was reading, it's been 15 years in the making. So what does that actually mean? Well, they've been planning that for 15 years. I hope not. One would expect, that a mission being planned for so long and successful, and quite frankly, you would well, listen, you hopefully, I don't know, maybe I've misread that, but there's no way they've been planning that for 15 years. Let's just move on quickly. Was it a successful attack? Because this is what we're talking about. I'm talking about this bombing, okay? This is what everyone's talking about, and this is the next decisions that are going to be made over the next week or so are going to be off the back of that. So you've got to ask yourself, was it a successful attack? That also has got to depend on what the objective was. If the objective was to bring the enrichment or the enriched sort of uranium out of the bunkers and to the surface, so ISR could, track those assets to less fortified facilities, then yes, that mission was successful. Or was the plan to cripple enrichment at those three plants and cause disruption to that nuclear program of theirs? If so, then yes, the mission was successful. Or did the US set out to take out those sites and the enriched uranium, rendering the whole Iranian nuclear program destroyed? Then no, that's a massive failure. If that was the intention, that mission failed because I actually don't believe that was the intention. To be honest with you, they knew, because the US knew that wasn't sort of possible whilst enriched uranium could have been, because again, we still don't know whether it was or it wasn't. But if it was there, it would have been 600 to 800 feet below the surface. And the Iranians obviously are aware that the GBU-57 capabilities don't reach that far. Okay, so all they're going to do is damage or fracture those facilities. Right. So there are, I don't know about you guys, and I don't know how much sort of surfacing surfing you guys are doing on YouTube. It's easy to start clicking your way through stuff and just, sort of you find yourself in completely different places. But there are so-called ex-CIA personnel, ex-security advisors, ex-military generals and strategists, and ex-geopolitical senior advisors. Who else have you got? You got people that have worked alongside world leaders and people that have gained, a wealth of respect within their field of expertise online at the moment. They're all doing their videos, or they're being, they're guests on other YouTubers' sort of platforms, but they're all saying different things. So, who is right and who is wrong? who actually is the expert and who isn't? Because if they're all experts within their fields, then what are they saying? Because they can't all be right, simply based on the fact that they're all contradicting one another. You cannot have one expert say that the bunkers have been completely destroyed and rendered inoperable, for then another credible expert to come along and tell everyone it wasn't. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is you just need to be a little bit careful with what's being said out there on sort of other channels, other platforms, mainstream, and what's coming out of what's being discussed in conversation with your mates in the pub or whatever it is. Anyway, whilst we're on that, let's just let's get that in there. On top of that, guys, without going on for hours, I wanted to try and get this done quickly, but there's a bit of detail. But do you know what's really getting on my tits at the moment? And that is all of this clickbait content bullshit out there. These people talking a load of bollocks, either on top of or alongside the politicians and other parliamentary representatives. I've found over the last few weeks and possibly months now that there are YouTube channels out there racking up hundreds of thousands of views and subscribers, listening to all of this dribble. And what makes it worse is that they're all saying different things about the same news, all of the same theories, even contradicting each other, and then even contradicting themselves a week later. So that they'll put a video out last week and then they'll contradict themselves this week because they've forgotten what they were saying. Yet there are millions of people following it. And do you know why that is? I've worked out why it is. If you're new to this channel, you may not know, but for anyone who's watched any of my sort of other videos on here, you'll know that I've spoken about and I'm going to apologise in advance, because I might go on about this too much, but there's the 85% sheep, NPCs, normalcy biased people, or whatever you want to call them, and then there's the 15% shepherds. That's in life and population societies and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with either of these two categories of people. They simply just view the world differently, from one another. They're different behaviors, normally based on their beliefs, upbringings, personalities, surroundings, or whatever it is. You will find that people living closer to the conflict are likely to be more shepherds than the sheep. And because the reality of war and conflict isn't too far away. The further away one is from a conflict, and a good example is us here in the UK, they're more likely to be sheep. And unfortunately, here in the UK, we are definitely talking about at least 85% of the population here. I'm not saying you guys, because you're online and you're researching war and conflicts, threats and prepping. That's the reason why you're listening to this video and you're following this kind of content. What I'm trying to do is just trying to advise you on not being distracted, misled down the wrong path, and being sucked into all this mainstream news stuff, really, because it's not really getting anyone anywhere. We do jump onto those channels and those videos because we're looking for confirmation to justify why we're actually prepping in the first place. I'm talking about the normalcy bias crew, those that simply will not accept nor believe that the shit's going to hit the fan. But when we talk about the sheep in this context, that being war and conflict, if you go up to a herd of sheep and just clap your hands, they'll all sort of disperse in different directions because they don't know where to go and nor who to follow. The sheep are the followers. They follow instructions from the government. They like an easy life, and who doesn't? They do the 9 to 5 job. None of them like doing or want to do, but they do it anyway. They're not really happy with what they have, and they wish that they had more and they were doing better. But then, that's all of us. They'll have a couple of beers through the week. They might pop into the gym every now and again, and if they're lucky, they'll treat themselves to some kind of takeout at the weekend and walk them bloody dogs. And that's it. They'll get up in the morning and off they go again, back to the much hated job. And they just hope that everything's going to, or someone's going to come along, somebody or something, shall we say, is going to come along during the 48-hour break that you have at the weekend. And if the shit does hit the fan, then they just hope that the government will come along, wipe their asses, and just help them out. And why not? That's the least, they can do if they've been paying into the pot all their lives. That isn't their fault. Because it's exactly what the governments want you to be doing. Basically, they want and they need you and I to be part of the system, obviously, because they rely on us heavily. Unless you're out there doing that shitty job, the government aren't receiving payments from you, from I, in the form of tax. And for the UK government, that's in excess of £1 trillion per year on tax receipts. Whilst I'm talking about that, this is a slight swerve. Okay, we're hearing about all of these, all this money that's having to go out and be spent here and spent there and stuff like that. And where they're going to find the money for this, and how are we going to afford this, and all the rest of it. They don't. They've never. They tell you how much they're spending. Okay, we're looking at the welfare reform. I think that's the topic of conversation over the last few days, and how it's going to cost 5 billion. And anyway, whatever it's going to cost. But what they're not telling you is how much is actually in the pot in the first place. So everyone's jumping on this bandwagon saying, yeah, yeah, well, we're going to afford this, and now the government, and where's the money coming from, and then taxpayers this, and da. They don't even know how much is in the pot to start with. Just on tax receipts alone, there's £1 trillion, this is UK pounds, going into that pot. That's just that pot alone per year. Unfortunately, there's 284 billion of that, which is over a quarter of that trillion, coming straight back out and being paid out to people on benefits. Hence the reason why you're hearing about welfare reforms and so. Anyway, where am I going with this? Because this has got nothing to do with it. Let's forget about that. So from the moment, actually, I'll tell you what. That I've if I carry on with this, I'm going to end up ranting about the sheep and about this and about that. Let's move on, because it's not fair that I'm wasting your time, guys. Going back to those the clickbait and those people maybe misleading you and stuff like that, but you'll find that when we talk about the hundreds of thousands of views and subscribers on some of these misleading mainstream aligned channels, they're actually from that sheep category. Excuse me. Even though they sort of don't believe they're potentially in danger, they still want to watch content that tells them about these dangers. That's madness. For anyone out there who is taking what's happening seriously, who is genuinely concerned that this game of political risk or chess may affect you and your family, you're absolutely doing the right thing, guys. You are genuinely taking responsibility of those around you, your family, your home, and everything else that means something to you. You are without a doubt on the right track. But this, this also is my advice to you. And I'm just going to change the screen because I'm actually in my attic actually doing this at the moment, and it's hot up here at the moment. I remember when I started this channel, I was reluctant at first to discuss topics of conversation to avoid being called a scaremonger, providing misinformation, and even being accused of conspiracy theories. That's not that didn't happen to me online, although it did if I was commenting on somebody else's content. All of my content is based on things that are happening now, events that have been unfolding since the 24th of February 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, and announcements made by some people with solid reputations. But I must say that I'm finding now, after a couple of years, that even some of those yes, even some of those are full of shit. They're clickbaiting us all, and they don't back up their claims. What you will hear from me is my opinions, and I've always said from the very beginning, for the last 1,223 days now, I believe. Now, this is me, guys. I believe World War III started 1,223 days ago when Russia invaded Ukraine. But I have to emphasize this also, that's only my opinion, guys. That's based on the research and the data gathered over, 1,200 days. I'm not asking anyone to believe me, and I'm true. I truly hope I'm wrong. But that's the whole reason for me sort of starting this channel in the first place, just to warn others of the possibilities which are vast. they're quickly turning into likelies. They're no longer possibilities, they're likelies. We're starting to see it here in the UK. I knew this was coming, and I've been trying to tell people that they're drip feeding us. Okay, but the drip feeding tap's been turned up, guys. Um, you know, so I just want to help you guys sort of better prepare, just in case that shit does hit the fan. Right, we're finishing off nearly. Try not to get sucked into all of the bollocks online, guys. At the moment, the misinformation, misperception, deceptions, and the fake news. Just make sure that you can identify the potential risks and threats to yourselves, to your home, and to everyone that lives in that house. Then just plan out how you're going to get through and survive those possible threats. If in fact they actually come to your doorstep, because again, it depends on whereabouts in the world you live. Another critical piece of advice from me is, do not put your life on hold for all of this. Do not think, oh, well, fuck it. What's the point? We're all done. I do not know what is going to happen. And just because I believe World War III has started doesn't mean that it has. I'm not here to scare anybody at all. Of course, the topic of conversation can be overwhelming for some, but I promise you, once you've got your head around this, and you start preparing for any possible threat, you will start to feel a whole lot better, about anything that's likely to sort of happen. So, there's going to be anxiety and emotional meltdowns, panic buyers, and people running around like headless fucking chickens. Those guys, they'll come from all of those people that choose to ignore all of the signs and signals and advice being provided. You cannot worry about those people, guys. Uh, that's their choice, and they'll have to live with it. I've come to the conclusion, based on what I've sort of seen happening in Ukraine over the last 3 years now. What has happened since the 7th of October, 2024, last year in Israel? What is unfolding right now as we speak, and how these sort of theatres of war are developing. I hope that I'm wrong. I don't want any of this. I want, I want my life to go back to normal, because this has affected, and it is affecting my life here in the UK, simply because of, for the last, what has it been, the last 25 years, 26 years, I've been working up until last year. So there's been no reason, rhyme or reason, for me to be out of work. And I've now been out of work for over a year now. So that's impacting me. I've seen how the cost of living, the recession, or whatever you want to call it, kind of really kicked off when Putin invaded Ukraine. There was the energy prices, first, that went up, and everything else then sort of came into play, including the cost of the very thing that we need to get to sort of stay alive, and that is food. Those prices are going up. I've seen, when looking for new job opportunities, which I'm doing every day, how those opportunities are far and few between. There are less vacancies out there, and that's understandable, because there's going to be companies, their owners, investors, and management. They're all making strategic business decisions, based on possible conflict in Europe. They'd be silly not to be doing that. I've spoken to some HR directors in a couple of businesses. I know them, and they've also told me that there are recruitment freezes and no business travel for their colleagues, and many other financially sort of impacting decisions are being made, in view of the economy and the uncertainty, caused by the war and conflict around the world. Just look at the signs, especially those that can affect you. So I'm talking from experience. I believe truly that the reason why I'm out of work, um, is because of this war. But guys, this is why everyone's confused. All of this misinformation, clickbait, fake news, people who think they know what they're talking about, trying to convince the world that either we're all in a world of shit, or there's nothing to worry about, guys. So everyone's going to be fine. It's misinformation. I'm giving you advice based on the last 1,223 days worth of research and data collection and all the rest of it. That's not to say that I'm right, but I'm just giving you my opinions and my advice to you. So to summarize, I don't work for any of these establishments, and I've stated, this fact in many of the videos that I've done. I don't work for the intelligence or government or the military. Anything I say is based on, like I say, the information and the stuff that I've gathered online, which I have to heavily analyze and filter nowadays just to get anywhere near the truth. but I will provide opinions on many of these matters based on this information. I'm here doing these videos to hopefully highlight some points that may or may not be being discussed in detail. I'm finding that a lot of the content they're brushing over headlines. It's mainstream. A lot of these so-called non-mainstream channels on YouTube have now become mainstream. So they're all talking from the same hymn sheet. If you want to know what they're talking about, just stick the TV on and watch the news at whatever time. I'm hopefully casting a slightly different view on subjects. I want each and every one of you out there just get switched on, and at the very least, just get a plan together. I want nothing more than that. I'm not here to entertain you, nor am I here to earn any money out of this. I'm a prepper and not a YouTuber, and sadly, there's a big difference, a very big difference between the two. People are getting confused with that online. We don't have time to be funny, which is a shame, to be honest with you, because sometimes a little humour can help. But let's get our heads together. Let's use some logic when listening to all of this potential rubbish out there, and common sense when planning to prepare. The reasons why I'm mentioning this is because I even started getting sucked into some of the stuff online. I'm spending too much time online, maybe, which is something that has happened more than once over the last couple of years. And it was starting to distract me. It distracts you and it takes you away from the truth. So just take a step back and just look at the bigger picture without all of that fog. Right. So finish off. Sorry, it's gone on for a little bit longer, but everyone now seems to think, or anyone I speak to now, seems to think that the end of the Middle Eastern conflict, certainly between Israel and Iran, that's finished. If that is the case, and we hope that is the case, then the bombing raid last weekend means that Iran was severely hurt and damaged, as a result of that, and they cannot come back from it. And they want to start sitting down and discussing peace. But sadly, we know that's not the case. Their intention is to carry out or carry on, shall we say, with the with their nuclear program. And its intent, which is written in scripture, is to wipe out Israel, which all stems from religion, as we know, which I think I covered it in the last video, and we won't be covering it again here. However, let's just look at the bigger picture quickly before I sign off. Why has the conflict between Israel and Iran ended up where it is today? October the 7th rings a bell, and that ignited a new wave of attacks against Middle Eastern terrorists. That's Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis and others. See, this has always been a fight against terror. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, did the bombing of those facilities stop terrorism? Of course not. But has it put it all on hold for now? Of course not, because such groups and individuals are probably worse now. And they're going to be worse now than what they were before those bombings. In fact, the bombing raid would have probably further fueled sort of regional militants and terrorist organizations. Did the bombing raids stop Iran producing enriched uranium? No. But what it has done is it's put the program on hold for a bit because there is one thing that is clear here out of all of this information, and that is that those facilities, regardless of any enriched uranium or not, have been damaged. Okay, that's physics. That's just the law of physics. Dropping dropping 15-ton or 30,000 pound bombs on a structure of some sort that's it. It's going to cause some damage. How much damage? Who knows? But have those bombings made that situation worse? Of course it hasn't, because the ultimate goal has still not been achieved. And it's only prolonged matters. The nuclear program has only been halted, and it looks like it's not halted for long. Have the bombing raids damaged the current Iranian regime, forcing the regime to be replaced or changed? No, not yet. And it looks like actually the support for the supreme leader and his regime has been encouraged. It's kind of encouraging his follows, but that all depends on the bigger picture. And there, are there any talks at the moment about peace talks? Have we heard anything about peace talks? No, what we're hearing about today is a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza. But are we hearing any potential peace talks? No. And one has to ask why. Because immediately after ceasefire should come peace talks. Who would be at those peace talks? Who would they be between? If it was between Israel and Iran, that has to start. But then, should representatives from Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, amongst others, should they be attending as well? Because let's be real about this. This is a regional war. People are already calling this the 12-day war. People are already asking who won the war. And millions of people around the world believe this war is over and we can now just get on with our lives. There are much bigger energies and forces at play here, guys. Remember, guys, Iran, Russia, China, and North Korea have come together as an alliance. They're working as one. The ultimate goal for those countries or leaders will be America and NATO. War is still raging in Ukraine with over, I think Russia done their biggest drone attack, over 400 drones and missiles sent into Ukraine 3 days ago, I think, on targets across Ukraine. It's a significant development, to be honest with you guys. But I'm not. I'm going to go into that on a separate video because it's not the 400 drones. It was the targets that they were taking out and where in Ukraine they were taking them out, which is significant to the next phase, should we say? But we'll talk about that on another video. Are the Chinese still thinking about invading Taiwan? If so, then why is Trump saying in some of his speeches 3 days ago that he's striking deals with China? Again, who, who's telling the truth and who's misleading who and what, you know? So again, you just got to be careful, guys. This is the reason why everyone's confused because of the bullshitting politicians supported by so many online outlets making matters even worse. So, what do I think? I don't think Iran are going to sort of take this sort of line down. I don't think that the damage, no, not the weekend just gone, but anyway, 10 days ago. I don't think it was so great that Iran have no choice now but to come to the table and start talking business. Russia and China will never want that to happen. If it did, then when I say if it did, as in, if Iran decided to, come to the table with Israel and the US, anyway, that's not happening. I'm not even going to bother with that. Um, and who's going to be making the deals with a regime that they want to remove, if that makes sense? I think Iran have a couple of ace cards up their sleeves, whether that be dirty bombs detonating in Israel, the US and Europe, an EMP above Israel, supplied by Russia and China. Funny you should say that because I think there's talk there this morning, Russia launching EMPs into low orbit this morning or last night. Don't quote me on that. I'll need to verify it. I've done a video on this a few months ago. Check it out, guys. It's called SpaceX. It's about Elon Musk's SpaceX, and he has a branch of SpaceX called Starshield, and it's in view of supporting national security. And basically, what I talk about there is what those payloads are in terms of the rockets that are going up and what's being released into low and high orbit. Anyway, let's not go into that now. I'm going to have a look at what's happened because this exact thing happened in May of last year, 2024, where Russia was said to have been launching EMPs up into space, and I then saw an uptick in rockets being launched from SpaceX into space and putting all sorts of satellites up. Anyway, let's forget about that. Unfortunately, we have Trump, treating the war and conflicts just like their business deals. He's never going to change from that. That's just the way it is. I'm not even going to go on about him. Try not to get sucked into much of this shit that's out there. It will fog your mind and it will just cloud your judgment, guys. As well as it's going to be time consuming and distracting. So just don't be complacent. Just keep a close ear to the ground. Stay switched on, guys. Sorry that went on a little bit too long, and it also didn't even put any content up on the screen, so you probably listened to the first 5 minutes and then jumped off. Guys, I'll catch up with you soon.